Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream panel discussion on this, a Friday, January 16th, 2026. I'm David Menzies, and I'm joined by my co-host in beautiful BC, Vancouver, to be precise, Drea Humphrey. How you doing there, Drea?
Well, I must say it really is beautiful, Vancouver. Like it's gorgeous right now. I don't want to rub it into everyone who's freezing their butts off, but I'm doing good and I hope everybody else is too. We have some exciting topics to talk about. And as always, you can be a part of the show. I love these panels that we started doing, not too long ago. But if you want to join in on the fun and contribute to our journalism, help us keep the lights on, you can do so by watching on YouTube and doing a super chat. And you can break news sometimes or just weigh in, and we read that out if it's a donation of $5 or more. Or if you're watching this after the live, you can leave a super thanks to help us out. And if you're on our favorite platform, at least mine, that would be Rumble, our free speech champions through the lockdowns. You can do a Rumble rant and we'll read those out too. So thank you for everybody who contributes to us, but we are free to all otherwise.
There you go. And by the way, Drea, just to clarify, when I say beautiful British Columbia, I mean the actual physical province, the mountains, the ocean. Much how
Hmm.
I feel about California. Love California, the mountains, the ocean. The politics, not
Yeah,
so much. Um,
fair.
and I
That's
can tell
fair.
you, U-Haul does an annual exit and entry survey every year. And last year, the greatest number of people fleeing a single state was California, and
Mm,
the greatest recipient of newcomers was Texas. I'll
really?
let you figure out the math as to why that is. But without dwelling on that, let us get to our guest. I'm happy to have Ian Runkle. He is the host of Runkle of the Bailey. He is a lawyer and legal commentator on YouTube. Well, happy New Year to you, Ian. How you doing?
Happy New Year. Maybe wishing I was in Vancouver where it's a bit warmer, but otherwise things are good.
That's right. You're coming to us from Edmonton, I understand, right?
Yes, where it is very much frozen.
Okay. Who knew Edmonton in January? Very cold, Anyways, in your province, Ian, there is a notable story, and it's very much top of mind given what we saw in 2025 with homeowners being charged criminally for defending their house, for defending their lives, even. I speak of Jeremy McDonald in Lindsay, Ontario, as a prime example, who had to deal with a thug using a crossbow that broke into his apartment at 3:30 in the morning when nothing good ever happens. Jeremy fought back, and guess what? Jeremy gets charged. But here we have a case, Ian, and I know this is right in your wheelhouse. Calgary Police and the Crown will not be charging a woman in an apparent self-defense killing. Ian, what do you know about this case? And why does it seem that in Calgary, at least, as it pertains to this case, they're going against the grain? They are not using that caveat, oh, well, you used unreasonable or unnecessary force, whatever that means. I still don't have a definition. But what can you tell us about this case and why the police and the Crown are not charging this woman?
So the details that have come out are apparently she was invited to a home showing, and this turned out to be sort of a ruse, a scam. And she brought her father along, but she and her father got separated in the house, and then she was attacked. Now, I haven't been able to confirm this 100%, but what I've heard sort of through the grapevine, and it might be wrong, was that apparently the knife was brought by the attacker, not by the defender, which is a also going to weigh into things. But in the course of this, the attacker ends up stabbed and dies, and she ends up going to the hospital. And the police have made a public statement saying that they have decided not to charge her. And that, I think, is a very positive development, but a lot of people have said, okay, what does this mean for me? And for most people, it's not going to mean a whole lot because she is in a very unique and, circumstances. Essentially, everything that you can possibly have here favor. This was a person who was known to the police, which of course is it's code for we know this guy is a bit of a, a troublemaker, a bit of a, a problem if that and so and there's this clear kind of ambush situation where she's lured under a false pretense. There's, and if it's turns out to be correct, the fact that she didn't bring a weapon, but one was brought by the attacker is also something. And the problem is that most people, she got very lucky because most people who are attacked by a weapon aren't going to be able to get the weapon away from the attacker. It's actually a quite unusual thing. And especially with, size differences and strength differences. And it might have been a different situation if, for instance, she had brought a weapon along. I suspect she brought her father along as, just like in case something goes wrong, it would be nice to have somebody there for support. But, what if she instead brings, like just a little pocket knife? Would they have charged her with possession of weapon for purposes dangerous to the public peace for self-defense? Would they have charged her with, for the actual killing on the basis of, well, you used a weapon that you brought with you, so that's less reasonable. The case law has sort of talked about defense against unavoidable attacks. But the question is, the courts typically would not view this as like an unavoidable attack. But for the average person, this is exactly what we'd call an unavoidable attack because it's unexpected. You can't avoid violence that you can't expect ahead of time. And are we supposed to say that, women are just not entitled to go to showings? What if her father was, had passed and was showing and she doesn't have somebody to bring along in support? Is she supposed to live her life such that she's just not able to do things? Or do we support a world where, where people can go and participate in these things and because they are secure? These are sort of fundamental questions, but a lot of people watching this were like, oh, great, I can carry a knife. It's like, that is not what this case says. That's not what most people are not going to have as many factors in their favor as she did. And this may also, the Crown Prosecution Service in Alberta has gotten sort of new directives to basically say, please consider self-defense a little more thoroughly than maybe in the past. And maybe that played a role. I'm not sure if it did, because quite frankly, I think this would have been an absolute losing case for the prosecution if they'd ever decided to bring it. I can't see a path to winning this one. As a defense lawyer, I would put this in front of a jury any day of the week because you're just not going to convince a jury of ordinary citizens that a woman is acting improperly in using the knife against the attacker. But I mean, sometimes that changes. People say, oh, well, if the knife injury is in the back or something, and they assume that necessarily means that it would be not self-defense. The problem is that self-defense situations sometimes get messy. So you can see, for instance, in forensic journals and things, self-defensive injuries that end up in somebody's side or back because, for instance, a woman who's being choked, who manages to gain access to a knife. One of the case studies they were looking at was a woman who was in her kitchen and was being attacked by an ex-boyfriend. This is in a forensic journal. And he was choking her, and she manages to grab a kitchen knife and stabs, but the knife wounds are all in his back because that's what she can reach. because she's stabbing around to a guy who's got her close in. Well, that's a fact that might lead a prosecutor or a police officer to decide to pursue charges. Why were the stab wounds in his back if it's defensive? Clearly, this guy must have been running away, and then she ends up in a court process. And one of the big advantages that we see here, where they've decided not to lay the charges, is that means that she's not going to have to pay the costs of the defense.
Yes.
Because lawyers are expensive, and there's not a whole lot to be done about that. Lawyers have a whole lot of it, education that they've got to often be still paying back. They've got overhead costs. They can't really work for free in most cases. And so you've got somebody who may be the victim of a very serious crime. Like, imagine that they had decided to pursue charges in this case and that she's ultimately acquitted at trial. Well, a lot of people defending the system will say, isn't that the result we wanted, because she was cleared at trial? But if it costs her $100,000
Yes.
to get cleared, is she has that really been justice? She'll never get that back. The court system doesn't pay people back for being cleared. And we should ask, like, how much should a victim have to pay to clear their name afterwards? What we haven't seen released is what this guy's motives were, and we may never actually determine that because he's deceased. But was he trying to rob her? Was he trying to do something worse?
It's unbelievable. And to your point, Ian, as the saying goes, the process is the penalty. Yeah, you're found not guilty. Here's a 6-figure bill. Good luck paying it off. Drea, I want to talk about the facts of the matter that Ian raised. Because I believe this might be a case when it comes to an attack, a male on a female, a 1 in a million situation. Here's a house where the man is premeditated in carrying out some trouble. We know that because he's got a big knife and he's not in the kitchen. He has the element of surprise. He is presumably bigger and stronger than his victim. And somehow, this is the fascinating thing, his victim disarms him, uses his own weapon on him. He ends up on the business end of that knife. He's gone. She lives. But all that being said, I think this is a victory in terms of common sense, that this woman will not be put on the stand to justify her actions. I can only imagine the trauma she probably still lives with, being ambushed that way. What say you, Drea?
Well, it's fascinating. I can't believe that she overpowered him. I'm so happy that happened. My understanding is that she was quite beat up as well, when they got a hold of her. And to think that this man was already known to police, we should say his name. I think it's Ahmed Shamaz, something like that. I can't remember, but
Shamaz Ahmed, I think.
Yeah, I think Ahmed is the surname. That's right.
Yeah, Shamaz Ahmed, already known to police, plotting to do this even though her father's near. This is serious. It reminds me of the 2008 case. I think her name was Lindsay Buziak. It didn't end as well as what's happened here, where she was showing a home and then was murdered, and it's still gone unsolved, actually. And she was murdered in there. So the fact that she was able to overpower, take his weapon, kill him to save herself, and thankfully not have to face a trial is just, a win-win-win for what's going to be quite the traumatic situation for her. Also, just another example. I mean, Ian, you explained how everything kind of worked in her favor as far as the circumstances go. How traumatizing would it be to go through something like this and then have to face court? Like, you go through all that and you have to defend yourself. And it reminds me of another case. This one's in the U.S. Where the circumstances weren't as favorable, I guess, even though the U.S. is better with self-defense. But for this woman, it was a pregnant woman, and another woman had basically plotted to try to take her baby from her and ended up tricking her to get inside of her own home. So inside of the pregnant woman's home, that's where the scuffle happened, and that's where she had to go ahead and kill this other woman in her defense. And that's a bad look. That's not the same circumstances because now it's inside of your home. It's somebody visiting your home. What the heck happened here? And she had to go through a quite a long trial, which is very gruesome. And she lost her baby too. So, yeah. So I'm happy for the way this went. And I'm reminded about Premier Danielle Smith when she was asked about the other case with the crossbow. And I just remember she's just so perfectly and nonchalantly said something along the lines of, well, if you don't want to be beat up, don't break into homes. I believe that was her who said that. So hopefully that's sending a message provincially to the prosecution services, to the police, which is not, I think it's RCMP out there. So I guess that's federal, but I think it's setting the tone in some ways as well.
And, Ian, I want to touch in the big picture of home invasions, at least in Canada, not in so many states south of the border. I think what grinds people's gears is that when there is indeed a home invasion, and as I mentioned, the Jeremy McDonald case where he fights back, he sends his assailant to hospital, but he gets charged. I've always been of the belief that when you are in your own home, that's the end of the finish line. There is nowhere to run to, okay? Especially if you have elderly family members, children in the house. It's either fight or flight, and at that stage, it's fight. What really enrages me is this business of, oh, well, he used unnecessary or unreasonable force. Ian, I have sought expert opinion. Define unreasonable or unnecessary force. What does that mean? An open hand, a fist, a wooden spoon from the kitchen table? I mean, you're a lawyer. This is your bailiwick. What is the definition, if there is one?
If anybody tells you that they can, measure this out for you, they're not being honest, because there isn't a good definition. It comes down to the very specific, precise, details as evaluated by a bunch of people who are sitting in an uncomfortable wooden chair later after the fact, making this decision as to whether or not your actions were reasonable. But the thing is they don't have the fear. They can try to intellectualize it, but they're not in that moment of terror. Now, the law says that the actions must be proven to be, not reasonable, and that has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So it does provide some cushion there. But what we see in a lot of these cases is either because somebody is carried by adrenaline and they go what the courts describe as too far, because, for instance, after somebody's down, they give them a couple of kicks because they're in the adrenaline moment, or that, or you get that they're ultimately cleared. And being cleared is in some ways kind of a sick joke sometimes, because you get people who there's a home invasion and they lose the house as a result of defending it. They end up having to take out a mortgage on this house. And it's like, well, the thief wasn't going to be able to steal the house, but he was there and potentially, and you get people who break in carrying knives, carrying crowbars, carrying, in, the Jeremy McDonald case, a crossbow. That's somebody who's clearly contemplated at least that they might do harm to the occupants. Like if you're bringing a crossbow in on a break and enter, you have decided that violence is okay. That person has decided that violence is within the context of what they do. I personally say that the law here should be changed, and it should be changed in a way that provides for a much stronger defense, both in terms of at a trial and providing for a broader sphere of self-defense would discourage prosecutors from bringing it. But I also think we should have an ability to bring a pretrial application, just to say the prosecution is not near a possible conviction here, and it should be thrown out early rather than a trial. Because, a trial on an allegation of, for instance, murder is going to take, 2-3 weeks at least. And, we should have something where it can be thrown out in a much less expensive and quicker process. But the standard I would set is something that says something like not just unreasonable, but grossly disproportionate to a degree that shocks the conscience. And I would sort of specify some examples in the law in the sense of, for example, by way of example, torture, any sort of like, SA violations, because I don't want to get you guys demonetized or the like. But, like if you do the Pulp Fiction thing and tie the person up in your basement, that would be considered, okay, now you're into grossly disproportionate. But if it's just that you used more violence than we might consider, like if you don't want to encounter violence, stay out of violent people's houses. It's kind of,
Yeah.
and the homeowner shouldn't be expected to react reasonably in a situation that they have never chosen, that was chosen in fact by the home invader. I think, I think of these cases. There was a case in Ontario. You were asking earlier about, what is it like when somebody wins? In Ontario, there was a case that was eventually dismissed, and the prosecutor said it was like one of the clearest cases of self-defense they'd ever seen. A woman was attacked by her ex-boyfriend who beat her up so badly that when she went to the neighbors to ask them to call the police, they actually thought that it was a Halloween costume. It was mid-October that she went in there, and they said there's no way any person could have that much blood, so it's got to be a Halloween costume. It was truly horrific. But in the course of that, she manages to grab his pocket knife, stabs him once in the leg, and because of that stab, he lets go, but she had hit an artery, and so he bled out. The prosecution dropped the charges. But in the meantime, she spent months in jail.
Oh,
and you can't give her that back, right?
Yeah.
Ian, that is outrageous. And, Drea, to Ian's point, a broader defense, changing the law, I think that's why one of the planks of the Pierre Poilievre Conservatives is a home run for the vast majority of Canadians, which is in a home invasion. If you are using force, including lethal force, that should be allowed, really, for the reasons I just gave earlier, that there's nowhere else to run to when you're, in your own castle. And also to Ian's point, let's imagine you are being home invaded. You have adrenaline coursing through your veins. You're not going, he looks like he's got an axe. I guess, can that mean I can use a steak knife? Is that proportional? No, Dre, I can only imagine you in that situation. You're in mama bear mode. You are going to fight. And you know what? If the guy does go down and you add a few kicks, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, that's the way it should be. Listen, we all want to be safe, especially in our own homes, and we can all sense that it's becoming less and less safe where we live. And so for these reasons, we really need to have something brought to the table and some changes made. To think that if a man comes into my home and by the grace of God, because it certainly isn't by strength, somehow I overpower him, as I would try and risk my life to protect my kids to do so. It should just be a no-brainer. And what's sad about these situations where they are in fact having to defend themselves, or as you bring up, spending money to do so, that's on top of, from the cases I've seen where they've had to go through the trial, that's on top of pretty damning evidence that something went wrong here and it wasn't their fault, whether it's how battered they were or other evidence. So it actually is just ridiculous that we can't protect ourselves. This is a little bit of a side issue, but out here we have bears come to our door, we have cougars come too, and we're actually not allowed to protect ourselves from them either. Which
What?
is you can't just, if a bear is in your yard being aggressive, you can get in a lot of trouble if you shoot that bear. You're supposed to call the conservation officers, and it's going to take them forever, and they got to set up some trap, and of course by then the bear is long gone. But So, anyways,
Incredible.
Yes,
But,
bears.
back to you, Ian. You raised a fascinating point in your preamble about maybe things are different because this lady disarmed Mr. Ahmad and used his own weapon against him, as opposed to going into her purse and pulling out her own knife. Maybe then things change, or maybe they don't, because forgive me, I'm going by memory. A few years ago in your province, I believe it was Red Deer, a man came home and he found a home invader in his house. He was asleep. And he got on the phone, called 911. He also got his shotgun out. And he phoned police. And I believe what happened, he woke up. There was a scuffle. He was shot dead. And again, no charges, which I think is the right call. So I guess what I'm getting at, maybe things are a little different in Alberta, especially since, as Drea mentioned, the Premier said, you don't want to get hurt. Don't break into somebody's house in the middle of the night.
I actually have to commend both our police and our Crown Prosecution Services for the discretion in some of these cases, because it is really important. They can always charge later. Like, they can always decide. The statute of limitations on a murder is never. Like, it just, they can charge that 20 years, 30 years, etc. So there's no rush. If you've got a case where somebody is potentially or very likely, I think that generally, if you've got somebody who's in their home using force in defense of their home, the police should be saying, we don't want to charge until and unless we think we've got a really good case. And I mean, there might be really good cases. Somebody invites somebody over to their house on the pretense of a Facebook marketplace deal or something like that, and then attacks them. There might be cases where the police are like, yes, this guy is clearly the villain, even though he was in his own home. Okay, whatever, that's fine. But if they don't know, they should figure that out before they decide to lay the charges, because they can always lay the charges later. And one of the things that also, I think, weighs into the home defense aspect is that we have basically banned all non-lethal weapons. You can't have a taser. You can't have pepper spray that is designed for use on people. You can't have any of these things. And so what that means is that a homeowner who grabs something to defend themselves because they're terrified is almost certainly going to be grabbing something that is either lethal or potentially lethal. Baseball bats can kill people quite easily. Really common, kitchen knife. Knives are actually kind of not great in self-defense because people will be killed by a knife before they stop fighting, if that makes sense. You can take a stab wound to each lung and still fight for several minutes, which is long enough to kill somebody. But so they can be dead, but still moving and still fighting and still attacking. So, knives are actually highly lethal. If somebody is a firearm owner and they get into their gun safe, and I mean, you can obviously understand why somebody might do that. A young woman at home who hears somebody breaking into the house, you're going to go for whatever's most effective. And this particularly weighs on smaller, lighter, older people. Because, for instance, I'm not a big guy. I've got, little noodle arms. I'm not going to fight somebody off, with like a pocket knife successfully. If I'm going to successfully win that, I would much rather have a shotgun in my hands or something like that. Because the average criminal is bigger than I am, stronger than I am, and might be, chemically enhanced in that moment. That's a fight I'm going to lose. So I get into this weird circumstance of either you lose the fight or you're using force that people are like, why did he grab the shotgun? Why not grab a kitchen knife? Why not grab a baseball bat or something like that? And it's like, because I don't want to lose. I don't want to get killed by this 100%. Guy who's in my house.
And Drea, to Ian's point about the arsenal of would-be weapons, Ian's making me think about a story I covered back in the days of the Sun News more than a decade ago. I think it was outrageous for all the wrong reasons. It was a Indian restaurateur in Toronto, Mr. Polapati. He ended up getting the nickname the Spice Man because his restaurant was getting habitually burglarized. And he fought back against a burglar using cooking spices. And he was charged, I'm going by memory,
Oh, wow.
he was charged and convicted of assault and assault with a nauseous substance, I believe.
Nauseous.
This is outrageous. I mean, but again, that's Toronto, and maybe Toronto's different than Alberta, and maybe Alberta's different than BC. Your thoughts?
What an insult to his cooking skills. A nauseous
I never thought of that.
But, I'm actually just taken aback by the story. I'm trying to understand how you could defend yourself with spices. Was it just like burning the guy's eyes? Do you know a little bit more, David, on how he physically warded the person off?
Well, I would imagine if you have spicy spices, if that's not a redundant line, getting that in your eye is, pepper spray is based on pepper, right? So cayenne pepper. So, I can see that happening, but I don't care. This is a guy robbing him again. And to go through that and by the way, I don't think his restaurant exists anymore. So again, the process is the penalty. I just, maybe I can frame it in this context. Drea, what do you think about Pierre Poilievre's pledge? If you use even lethal force, you will not be charged with a conservative government in power. The law will be changed to allow this. So we get away from this horrible, ambiguous, unreasonable definition of force to the intruder or the would-be murderer.
It's a yes for me. Again, you should be able to protect yourself. I mean, that guy grabbed spices. It doesn't even sound like he was trying to. It sounded like he was just grabbing what he had, what he uses every day, the poor guy. So, definitely I'm all for being able to protect yourself with whatever way you can. And you don't know. Someone breaks into your house. It doesn't matter if they broke into it, yesterday, the day before. It can easily escalate. We're seeing that out in Surrey. Businesses being shot up all the time. You just don't know. You should be able to protect yourself.
And Ian, we're running out of racetrack here, so I'm going to give you the final word. And it's this, and I think it pertains to, for example, the Lindsay situation with Jeremy McDonald fighting back against a crossbow-wielding thug, also known to police, which, by the way, is polite police talk for this guy's a scumbag. And we have several incidents on file that can prove that. It's this, officers' discretion. I can't tell you, since we covered that, and we went to Lindsay a few times to investigate this case, so many people said, why didn't the police officer look the other way? Why didn't the police officer embrace the common sense of what I would argue to be the vast majority of Canadians and say this poor guy was fighting back against an intruder, and luckily his young daughter, by a cosmic fluke, was not in the house in the apartment that day, because it was her bedroom that the assailant got into. Why couldn't the police say, no, nothing to see here, I'm not charging this guy? What are the rules of engagement when it comes to law enforcement, Ian?
In a lot of forces, there's a pressure to mark something as closed by charge, which means that they charge somebody. And so if the home invader isn't there, the most obvious target for closed by charge is the person who's there. That needs to be a cultural change where they can say no charge needed, and that being a thing. Really, I think a lot of this needs to come down to we need to get some of our police officers to watch old Westerns. And the reason why I say that is, you've got the old Westerns, you've got the good guy in the white hat, you've got the bad guy in the black hat. And sometimes what they really need to do is sit here and look at the case just from like a 2,000-yard view and go, who's wearing the white hat? Who's wearing the black hat? Maybe it's not so clear, but if you've got somebody who is obviously sort of the white hat person there, even if you can land a charge on them, even if you can wedge a charge in through the law, maybe you want to say, well, what side do we want to be on? Do we want to be on the side of the guy wearing the white hat, the innocent homeowner, the woman attacked, these things, or do we want to be on the side of the criminal?
Yep.
And if the police decide that they want to be on the side of the criminal, then they should think about how the public is going to look at them and how the public is going to consider them. Because I think a lot of people look at the system now as it is, and they feel that it's too much on the side of bad people, at least in these self-defense cases. And, so police officers out there, I really appreciate the work you do. I appreciate that you have difficult decisions to make, but please be on the side of the public. Be on the side of the homeowner. Be on the side of the woman walking home late at night. Um, the public is begging you with hands clasped, like, be on our side.
Well said, Ian. And by the way, before we leave you, you seem to be, to me, a pop culture fan. You've mentioned old westerns. You mentioned that incredible scene from Pulp Fiction where the victims turn the tables on the torturers. And I remember that scene. It still gives me nightmares just envisioning what's going to happen. And the Bruce Dern character says to the kingpin, Marseilles, and I'll clean up the language for our PG audience, like, what are you going to do about him? And it's the guy writhing in pain from the shotgun blast to the groin. And Marseilles says, I've got some guys coming from downtown with a blowtorch and a pair of pliers. You can hold him. And I got to be honest, I was cheering that line. Maybe I'm a sadist, but you know what? If you're going to torture and rape me, if I can turn the tables, so be it. But anyways, Ian, where can our audience find you in the days to come?
So I'm on YouTube, Runkle of the Bailey. That's Runkle. If you do a search, I'm also on Twitter. I tweet all sorts of random things. So if you're just looking for self-defense, you'll hear a lot about my dogs. But YouTube, Runkle of the Bailey, it'll autocomplete. That's the easiest way to find me. So
fantastic. Ian, it was an absolute pleasure. I think I speak for Drea as well. Thank you for joining us. And folks, we'll be back on the other side of the break with the Super Mark Carney trade deal. Yes, I'm being facetious. Hang on.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of...
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Big news! Rebel News now has premium memberships on X, Locals, and right here on YouTube. For just $4.99 a month on YouTube, you'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and access to members-only chats during our live streams. At $8.99 a month, you'll also unlock Rebel News Plus shows and our documentaries. But here's the catch. YouTube could cancel that premium tier at any time. That's why the best way to support us is at rebelnewsplus.com. It's just $8 a month, cheaper if you go annual, and you'll get exclusive extras like an ad-free site, comments access, and even the chance to submit op-eds. Wherever you join us, thanks for keeping our independent journalism alive and strong.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
All right, we're back. And just a reminder, you can chat with us if you want to on YouTube Super Chats and Rumble Rants. I'm going to do a quick ad break. Sometimes we have amazing sponsors who have amazing products and also keep us alive. So let's take a look. So this one is from the Ultimate Spike Detox, Amyloid Microclots. The trickery about man-made spike proteins is they can slowly and secretly create long-lasting effects inside the body despite people feeling fine. In a new peer-reviewed study, researchers tested the blood of 34 women and men, All who received the Pfizer mRNA vaccine and every one of them tested positive for micro blood clots circulating in their system. These are stubborn, hard to break down clots that have been linked to lingering symptoms in both the unvaccinated and vaccinated. So the obvious question becomes, how do we detox the spike proteins? Nattokinase. Okay, I don't know how to say that word. Sorry, my bad. A natural enzyme that has been shown to dissolve up to 84% of micro blood clots within 2 hours in vitro. Even a lower amounts, it still reduced the numbers of clots, the intensity of the clot signal, and the overall clot size. What makes this even more important is that this has also been shown to break down the spike protein itself in vitro. This means it's positively attacking the damage and the culprit simultaneously. No pharmaceutical therapy has shown this combined effect. This is why the wellness company created Ultimate Spike Detox. It is designed to support the body's natural ability to break down spike proteins and support healthy circulation. So if you're interested in this, head to twc.health/rebel and use code REBEL to get 10% off. Again, that's twc.health/rebel and get 10% off and get rid of those spike proteins.
You know, Drea, what a fantastic product, because I can tell you anecdotally, not a week goes by where I run into somebody who has buyer's remorse for getting the COVID-19 shot.
Yep.
And typically under coercion, there's a friend of mine, I won't give her name, but the story is true. She worked at the time for Shoppers Drug Mart, and it was get jabbed or lose your job. And under that coercion, she agreed to get jabbed. She's had health effects ever since. Get a load of this, Drea. Weeks after getting jabbed, they fired her. Well, laid her off, but never rehired her.
Yep.
Can you imagine,
Yes,
the
I can.
evil we endured during that time? So if this product...
I know someone with the same story about getting fired right after they caved to the coercion. It's just, it's so gross. But yeah,
It's
this product,
fantastic.
you're right.
So I'm
Much
going to tell
needed.
my good friend about this and see if it works for her. So, a product for the times, absolutely. Well, C is for Carney and C is for China. That looks like our new best friend these days. Forget about that enormous landmass of almost 400 people to the south of us. But Carney went on a trade delegation to China. Let's roll his quote that is going massively viral for all the wrong reasons right now. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the implications of basically some of these moves that Carney is announcing. And by the way, folks, spoiler alert, keep your eyes peeled if you can on Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan. Watch his face when Carney says a line for the... I mean, wow, 2026 is but 2 weeks old, but this might be the line of the year so far, eh, Drea? So
man.
Let's check out the Prime Minister.
The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
We should have showed Premier Mo's face a little longer because he's just like, what did I just hear? Did he just say that? But even if you watch it a couple times, if you haven't already, I encourage you to do so. Prime Minister Carney, he slows his speech down to say, like, he does not want to stutter. He knew exactly what he was saying. It was so calculated. It was like an evil villain. Once again, the conspiracy theorists are just conspiracy realists. I don't know what is going on here. Neither does Premier Moe. He's like, it's just, I can't get over it, but we knew it was coming.
You know, your statement, Drea, about being villainous, I mean, it was almost as though Carney was channeling his inner Darth Vader. The way he enunciated, the pause and lowering his tone. And of all three words that so many people, I think, in our circle don't want to hear, it's the New World Order. And translation, maybe if it's good for Brookfield, it's good for Canada, even if it isn't good for Canada. Is that what he's implying here, or is it something even more sinister?
Well, that's the thing. What is he implying here? He's saying this to China. I believe during the election, when he was asked something about the biggest threat, he claimed it was China, right? So he's telling China our partnership is so good to usher in the New World Order. And you're right. He knows that that phrase holds a lot of weight, and he is intentionally choosing it. So on the one hand, it's like, what did you mean by it? But no, even if we get a chance to ask him, which we should try to do, he knows what that phrase carries, and he's saying it. So it's playing with everything. But I wouldn't be surprised. There are some people who are like, this is ridiculous. When they hear it, it's going to trigger something in them. Then there's other people, like, I wouldn't be surprised if some elbows up people are now going to be running around saying the New World Order. Yes, this is what we need to take down Trump. We need the New World Order. Yay, China, because somehow you're more reliable. And I just want to say we shouldn't be too surprised that Mark Carney said this, because we have a little clip that I caught during one of the local campaigns out here, which is now elected Ernie Claassen, who was elected in the 2025 election for the Liberals. And let's play what he said. It's really short. This is what he said during one of his campaign moments.
We have an amazing leader in Mark Carney, who is showing or leading the way on the world stage as far as looking at how to challenge Donald Trump and to create a new world order, which in Canada doesn't mean that we're only being involved with the United States.
Wow. Birds of a feather, eh, Drea?
Well, yeah, that's his guy. That's his MP. And so he already knew. He's like, it's already there. Yeah.
Speaking of Donald Trump, some of the details of the trade deal, and the reason why Scott Moe was there, of course, was the debilitating tariff on canola oil. I think that's about a $4 billion export from Canada. And the tariffs came down from 84% to something like 15 or 16%. And also tariffs came off of seafood, crab, lobster, so that's good for Atlantic Canada. But in the Department of Quid Pro Quo, what's in it for China? Well, Chinese EVs are coming to Canada. EV cars, that is. It'll be capped at 49,000, but over the course of 5 years, the quota will go up to 70,000. Here's the problem. If you think Scott Moe is upset, can you imagine, I don't have to imagine, I've seen Doug Ford on the news reacting terribly to this announcement. Came out of the blue, no consultation. This is undermining the domestic auto industry, most of it located in the province of Ontario, of course. This is undermining all the billions of dollars of federal and provincial money going into EV battery plants. And now you're having these, and to make matters worse, Drea, I understand it, I think it's 50% of the Chinese EVs have to be cheap EVs. So in other words, 35,000 or less. Personally speaking, I wouldn't buy an EV from China based on ethical and moral concerns, even if I was getting a huge discount. But more to the point, in addition to undermining the auto industry here and the EV strategy, whether you agree with it or not in terms of the taxpayer funds, Donald Trump has yet to weigh in on this. And when he does, Drea, it ain't going to be good. The idea of Chinese EVs coming into Canada. And by the way, Doug Ford said something interesting. I'd like to check it out to see if it's true. If you're going to buy one of these Chinese EVs, good luck crossing the border because, as he called it, these are spy cars. And as soon as a Chinese EV is flagged, have fun making a U-turn. You're not getting into the USA. So how do you think Donald Trump is going to react to this announcement, Drea?
Well, listen, I do think as far as from our position in Canada, how President Donald Trump is going to act is unpredictable. I think that's an issue that we're facing. I don't think we're making it very easy for ourselves somehow, like when we tell China that, hey, this is great to usher in the new world order. I don't think he's going to like that very much. But yeah, you're right. There is a trade-off here. I'm happy that it's going to be better for the farmers in some way. But it's interesting. What stands out to me is the fact that there's this whole big bad orange man mission with Canadians, but China had these tariffs as well. Like China was already tariffing us in the wazoo in these areas. And it just seems like they're getting a pass. And again, all of a sudden we're going to China. But how is China any more reliable or predictable than the U.S.? This is an issue that I'm having troubles grasping. I see that the Auto Association has made a statement saying to the Prime Minister, to Canada, can you kind of hold off because the U.S. is still technically in negotiations, I guess, with this a little bit, including with Mexico. So can we hold off and see what's going to happen there? But I'm not holding my breath. I do think Canada, I guess, has to, make some moves to try to do something, considering it hasn't been going well.
Well,
And
I don't
a lot of
see.
that's due to his leadership, to Carney's leadership.
Well, I'm very happy for Scott Moe in the province of Saskatchewan, but I don't see this as a winner. And not only the Auto Association, Drea, but Unifor, which is the union that represents unionized auto workers in Canada, they blasted this as well, and with good reason. And by the way, folks, in case you think that Premier Ford might be exaggerating calling these things spy cars, let's throw to a clip when reporters asked a question to Melanie Joly. Basically, it's how come the Canadian journalists left their actual cell phones at home? Just while you see this one.
We're using burner phones for the first time when we covered this because China spies on journalists and businessmen. China intercepts communications. Is China really the right kind of partner for Canadian industry?
Listen, we've been clear-eyed. We're eyes wide open. We know this. But there's been investments by Canadian companies for years here. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Magna. Magna, one of the biggest car auto parts companies in the world. They have 30,000 people working here. We're meeting with Manulife. We're meeting with BMO. These companies have been in China for years. Now, obviously, we're having these conversations with the Chinese government. If they're going to invest in our country, they need to make sure that our companies are able to invest and have access to stability and have access to a form of certainty. And so that's what we're working on. When we engage with China and we engage with businesses like Tim and I have been doing, we put everything on the table to address these risks. And that's why this visit is so important, and it's been a focus of the Prime Minister.
Well, Drea, yet again, a Liberal cabinet minister that, shockers, knocked me down with a feather, didn't answer the question directly. But I'm sure if China says, pinky swear we won't spy on you with any of our devices, I guess that's as good as gold because, they're such good guys. I mean, we have, I always thought we had a problem with China. They had Chinese police stations operating in our dominion. This is the same nation that incarcerated for more than 1,000 days. Imagine that, the two Michaels. And suddenly this is our most favored nation to strike a trade deal with. But by the way, the reason why, let's be honest here, you can have EVs shipped from China and sell in Canada for under $35,000. It's not a level playing field. If you look at what China pays their workers, assuming they are paying in some cases, and what we pay, it's apples and oranges. And I just think this is an absolutely horrible deal. And I think it's poking the bear, Donald Trump. I don't have any evidence. Maybe it entails some research, Drea. But somewhere I just got this spidey sense feeling that Brookfield has its claws into this deal somehow, that their, Brookfield assets are getting enriched. Would you have signed this deal if you were Prime Minister?
No, I mean, I wouldn't last as prime minister for for a minute in Canada today, but it's no. And when I think again of dealing with China, running to China, and half of our country or more thinking that that's a good thing because we have to get away from Trump. You mentioned the hidden police stations. You know, we didn't sign on to the Belt and Road Initiative, but it looks like China's just doing it anyways. I mean, we're going to have these spy cars going around. No, the answer is no. Even the BC Ferries deal out here, and what happened to our steel workers, instead of using our steel workers, we're selling those huge vessels or getting them built in China, and they don't, like you say, they don't pay their laborers. So it's a no. We have to put Canada first.
Drea, I'm so happy you brought up the BC Ferries deal. That's about a $1 billion deal, if I recall. Why didn't Prime Minister Carney use that as a wedge issue? Say that unless you do this, guess what? That deal is done. To the best of my knowledge, it never came up. Why?
That is a good question, and they could have done it, and there were calls for them to push back and do that as well. So, yeah, I've seen some people say if they wonder if this deal is going to lead to sanctions from the U.S. As far as did we poke President Trump a bit too much. So we'll see.
I wouldn't be surprised. And by the way, in my checklist of egregious behavior by the Chinese regime, I forgot to mention the ongoing genocide of the Uyghurs, which gets almost zero publicity for some reason. But, never mind. I guess we'll deal with that later.
I used to cover that a lot when I first started with Rebel. I was kind of our China affairs correspondent. And then all of a sudden Canada became China-da. And I had to all of a sudden report on the same issues here. And but you're right, we should revisit that and follow up to see what's going on.
We really should, because it doesn't seem that the mainstream media has any appetite for that human rights travesty whatsoever. Why don't we throw now, here's a beauty, the Liberal Energy Minister, Tom Hodgson, again, talking about something I would imagine most reasonably minded people don't give a rodent's rectum about. Here, let's hear from the minister.
This was a framing around Canada and China sharing a view on how to get to net zero. This was a framing around how we work together in, yes, conventional energy, but also in clean energy. We met today with a number of clean energy companies who are world leaders in things like onshore and offshore wind, in world leaders, things like solar, world leaders in things like grid storage. We had comprehensive discussions around how they would like to bring that technology to Canada, help us deploy that so we can deliver affordable green power to power the transition to net zero. Yes, we also talked about conventional energy. We talked about it in the context of they really like that we produce the lowest carbon intensity LNG in the world. They are an investor in our first LNG project. They are going to be an investor in our second LNG project. And they are a major user of our conventional oil and gas.
Drea, thank God Hodgson is not the fictional character Pinocchio, because his nose would have grown so large it would have gone right through the camera lens. Do you believe what you're hearing? This is a country that typically in the course of a calendar year adds hundreds of coal-burning plants. And Hodgson is putting these guys on the pedestal as a beacon of clean energy? I mean, does he really think we're that stupid?
The thing is, I think some of us are, because you're right. It's been like that. We know that China and India is where it's at when it comes to these issues, yet we keep pretending like we're the problem and teaching our kids the same thing, our young adults coming from university. I think now that we've heard Mark Carney himself say the phrase New World Order, and that's what this is all about, and we know we have his book on values, and that those values do not align with values that will keep Canada prosperous and free. We know what this is all about. It's about ushering whatever that is to him, and probably how it benefits Brookfield. Incredible. That's what we're dealing with.
And if it isn't New World Order, it is, in the words of Minister Anand, recalibrating the relationship between Canada and China. Let's see what the minister has to say about. By the way, folks, she was in Richmond Hill last week. I tried to scrum her, but she ran away. But the good news is I wasn't falsely arrested and beaten up by an RCMP officer. But never mind. Let's check out what Anita Anand has to say.
It's a new year, David.
The geopolitical environment has changed substantially, not only in terms of military conflict, but also in terms of the economic environment, where the economic order is becoming rewired. As a result of that rewiring, Canada has taken a number of steps under Prime Minister Carney. First, unveiling 10 national projects, working on building the domestic economy and eliminating internal barriers to trade. Second, diversifying supply chains and trading partners.
But can you tell me how it led to coming here to China?
With the world's largest economies, including India, where we have agreed to start negotiations on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. China, another one of the world's largest economies and Canada's second largest trading partner, is certainly high on the list of a country where we need to sit at the table and have a negotiation and ensure while we are doing that we are representing Canada's security interests and the interests of Canadians. As I said, that is a complex issue. It is a complex relationship, but Prime Minister Carney is here to recalibrate the Canada-China relationship, and we as a group of ministers are pleased to be joining him.
Well, you know what, Drea, her words, quote, economic order is becoming rewired. It's so close to New World Order. But on the issue of India, are we on speaking terms with that nation yet? I mean, after Blackface went there doing his Bollywood routine and so many other issues, are we on speaking terms?
Let's not forget Jagmeet Singh and our Prime Minister inviting a terrorist to dinner out there. I mean, it's just been so embarrassing. We do have a chat that came in on this topic. Silverfeet 1280 donates $5 and says, please, to Minister Anand, please, I wasn't sure if this was for me at first, by the way. please, can Diversity Barbie leave us alone and go on to her ambassadorship?
Yeah, what country would we make her the ambassador of trade?
And breaking news, thank you to our coworker, Dave Shirley, who let us know that actually Prime Minister Carney was asked what he meant by New World Order. So let's play that.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. Yesterday when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership, Canada and China, this new partnership sets us up well for the New World Order. What did you mean by that? What is the New World Order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what are the trading, what is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects, I use fancy word, like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas? So like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade. Climate finance as another area. to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity. You will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments. I know it all sounds very dry, except for your organization, which I think takes an interest in it. These are important elements of how the system is going to work. And look, the expectation is that rather than these being developed necessarily through the IMF, WTO, and other multilateral organizations, it is going to be coalitions that develop them not for the world, but for subsectors of the world.
Drea, why is it when so many politicians use the preamble, let's be clear, or let me be perfectly clear, as Carney just did there, the result is a run-on sentence where clarity faces its extinction event? Could you imagine being a newspaper reporter, transcribing that answer, it's put into the story, and the editor says, what does he mean? And I would say, hey, boss, I have no idea. This is what came out of his mouth. Did you understand anything of what he just said there?
I started losing intelligence the longer that I listened to it, because you start second-year guessing, like, is he even speaking English? And I love how he broke down the terms. He told us it was a fancy term when he said architecture, and it was stalling. He's just, I believe, call me a conspiracy theorist, this is like neuralistic programming. And now I can't say a fancy word. But basically, it's about programming us to normalize certain phrases for what they're doing, for whatever reason they're doing it for. But it is this push. It's the push to rule it all. And that is what we're seeing, I think, unfold on the world stage.
Well, you obviously have a greater IQ than I do, Drea, because I would just like...
Neuro-linguistic programming is what I was trying to say.
I had no idea, you know, a bit of this, a bit of that. I mean, it was a complete, in my opinion, abstract statement, and there was zero tangible examples. Zero. At least that I can understand. So anyways, let's move on. I think the big fear now is when Donald Trump, who's got a full plate, especially in the Department of Foreign Affairs, on his table. I fully predict with this EV importation thing, this is just going to set back our negotiations in terms of getting a trade deal, maybe to an impossible point. So we shall see in the hours or maybe days ahead. One last thing on the agenda. Well, this is nice, isn't it, Drea? The Federal Court of Appeal upholds ruling finding Emergencies Act use was unconstitutional. Oh, you don't say!
You know, it's a win. It never should have happened. It should have been so obvious. But I will take this as a big win. I think we should all celebrate this moment. Hopefully this means there's some restoring of justice in Canada, that the decision was upheld for the obvious. And I'm interested to see how the legacy media is going to convey this.
Oh, good point.
To their people. Is the echo chamber going to receive what this actually means? And then you have like Tamara Leach, who's now a rebel, officially a rebel. She was always a rebel, but you have her on house arrest, thankfully able to work. You have Chris Barber, acting like villains. But look who is in the wrong. Look who is in the wrong. It was Canada.
It's amazing. Imagine that, as Drea said, folks, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber under house arrest, and every weekend in so many cities, especially Toronto and Montreal, you have the Hamas holes, as I call them, chanting genocide, displaying swastikas, cosplaying as Sinwar, sometimes doing vandalism and physical assault, and the police collectively shrug their shoulders, do nothing. Well, no, I take that back. On cold days, like it is right now, they'll deliver them Timbits and coffee, because, they get a little chilly out there. And meanwhile, these two freedom fighters organizing a peaceful protest under house arrest. And by the way, as you said, Drea, Tamara Leach is part of the team. And I saw the video earlier this week where she was sent out to Young Dundas Square. And what was so perverse is we had the video of Ezra in the boardroom with Lincoln and Efren, introducing the caper. And look, we have the permission slip from the probation officer.
We have the papers. Oh my God!
This danger to society, and again, when it comes to the criminal justice system, we see violent gangbangers, some of them accused of attempted murder, getting bail. They're back out in the general population, and typically back in before a judge within 48 hours. How do you make sense of this, Drea?
It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. And hopefully common sense is making a comeback. I always say the first death, COVID death, was in fact common sense, but hopefully it's being resurrected. We do have a super chat. One more. Thank you very much. It's from Wrong Way 54, donates $15 and says, Lord Carney is a squid stick.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but it sounds good. It sounds right.
I'm just wondering, that's not some kind of urban slang that's going to get us in trouble, right? Because a square like me, I've never heard that one bore. A squid stick.
Ignorance is bliss.
Would a squid need a stick? I mean, they've got all these tentacles. Why?
I think you're overanalyzing it.
I think I am, as usual. Well, Drea, do we have any more super chats?
No, that looks like it for today.
Okay, well, that was a great hour and a bit, and I want to thank again our guest, Ian Runkle, and you can see him at Runkle of the Bailey. And Drea, I want to thank you for your co-hosting, and of course, I want to thank our audience for tuning in, especially those of you who gave us a donation and enhanced my vocabulary with my new word of the day, squid stick, whatever that means. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. And as always, stay safe and stay sane.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.